Good morning, everybody, and welcome back to Money Multiplier with Kim. Today is part 3 of our 3-part series on solving retirement challenges using home equity. And I have 3 guests with me here today from One Trust Home Loans to share some information on this important strategy. First, we have Hank Sanders. Good morning, everybody, and welcome back to Money Multiplier with Kim. Today is our part 3 of our 3-part series on solving retirement challenges using home equity. I have 3 guests with me here today from One Trust Home Loans. First, I have Hank Sanders.
Hi, Kim.
Hi, Hank. How are you today?
Thank you for coming. How are you?
Brian Fitzpatrick.
Hi, Kim.
Hi, Brian. And Richard Eakins.
How are you?
Hi, Richard. Welcome back, guys. Thank you for coming on again. I appreciate it. So today, like I said, we're talking about solving retirement challenges using home equity. So my first question for you guys today is, why is it important that financial advisors and professionals consider home equity in their planning?
Kim, if I could take a crack at that, so I spent over 3 decades as a financial advisor before I started focusing about 7 years ago as part of a team to help educate financial professionals, advisors, CPAs, attorneys about how this works. How do you and why do you integrate housing wealth into comprehensive planning? And I think at the core, when we look at this, within the context of a financial plan, everything matters. Every detail matters. Every client is completely unique in this life that they're going to live and what they want to achieve in this one life. But just on a very simple basis, to not include any asset, particularly an asset that may be substantial in terms of the percentage of their net worth, probably doesn't make sense. And so when you begin to integrate these solutions, when you understand how they work, especially for this population that is right at or already in retirement, it produces another tool that the professional can use to solve challenges and to improve outcomes. And it's literally like everything else that would be brought into the financial plan in terms of a strategy or a product. It either adds value to that client above the cost of doing it, or it doesn't. But to not know, to not evaluate it, to not analyze it, probably isn't doing the client the right thing to be a fiduciary, either formally or just functionally.
I mean, do you find that financial advisors or professionals are utilizing this tool, or is it something that's new to them and that we should be sharing this information so they can incorporate that into their planning with their clients?
We are seeing, just in the 7 years that our team has been focused on this space, we've seen a dramatic change. So the thought leadership in the financial planning space have been on this message, particularly over the last 3 years, let's call it, where they're writing books, they're doing wide studies. Some of the best and brightest in the space are teaching financial advisors and other financial professionals how these solutions work and the absolute necessity to bring them in and be analyzed in the context of this broader plan. Nothing makes sense in a silo, but when you integrate it, when you look at how does it function within the context with what this one client is trying to achieve, it has to be analyzed to know, whether it adds value or not. And so all the associations that financial professionals belong to, like NAFA and NAFA and FPA, and then all the higher designations that a financial advisor can acquire, whether that's a CFP or any of the retirement specific designations like an RMA or an RICP, They all spend time in talking about how these retirement mortgages work and how they can be used as a financial planning tool rather than a standalone break the glass, last resort type of option that a lot of folks have historically viewed them.
Right. And then, like I said earlier, the normal everyday strategies that financial planners are using, some of them are not working right now, right? Some of them are just not performing. They're not stable. People want guarantees. People want more guarantees nowadays. That's, when I talked about that, is that, people are looking to put their money into places where they're not going to lose money. You have money in the stock market, you have money in the 401k. People are losing money. You don't want to be 65 and lose half of your retirement savings because, it's in the stock market. So having other opportunities with something like this, like when we had talked about, has safeguards, and it's a more viable option for some people than putting their money where they could potentially lose some of that. So being able to share this with financial planners is extremely important because it's another tool in their belt to be able to use. And as I talk to my clients as well, that part of when I talk to a client is safeguarding their money, especially in that 55 and older age group, because that's when you're worrying about, okay, am I going to have enough money? So,
yeah, I think that's spot on, Kim. You work in a specialized area where you're looking to protect clients' wealth, right? And to your point, we seem to be in uncharted waters, right, with what's happening in the world today and in our markets here at home. And so I think people are more cautious, probably justifiably so. But when you look at that transition, just in general, no matter what's happening in the seasons in the markets or whatever, when somebody moves from accumulating assets into that season of life, when they're living off of the assets that they've accumulated, so that distribution phase of life, things become much more difficult. The advisor better be up to speed on how to make that transition and then walk with that client for the rest of their lives, while, they have another 30 or 40 years to live off of those accumulated assets. That's a tricky thing to do. And it requires much more wisdom. And to your point, having a range of tools to be able to do the right thing for this specific client.
right. Yeah. That right now is the challenges that everybody's facing, advisors, clients, other professionals. That's what their challenges they're facing at the moment is, being able to safeguard those funds. So again, like I said, this is a great strategy for that. So maybe you can maybe if you can cite some examples for our audience, especially where retirees don't have long-term care insurance. And we know, and I've seen it, a lot of people do not have long-term care insurance. They just can't afford it. It's too expensive. I get that all day. I can't afford $100 a month, $200 a month. How can I safeguard my retirement savings if I have to be put into a facility?
Absolutely. And if it's okay, if I could share some visuals with your audience, I'll kind of walk you through, because there's a section here, and I'll kind of build up to answering that question of how these solutions can actually work for that specific retirement risk. But just to kind of set the backdrop, I'll talk you through a couple of things. The previous two sessions that we've had with you, Kim, we've talked about this range of people that could potentially use these solutions. And again, every client is unique. And so whether they have a lot of assets or they have very few assets and only have their home equity, that decision is unique to them. But when people move into retirement from their active working years, and maybe sold their business or they've retired or whatever it is, there are some core concerns that just about every human being on planet Earth has. And the first is, am I going to outlive my money? How do I make sure that my money's going to be around as long as I'm around? Again, we're living longer. You said that earlier. And that, this longevity risk is the risk multiplier for every other retirement risk that's out there. And so addressing that is key. The other one I think we touched on a little bit too, Richard did, is that nobody wants to back up in lifestyle. You know, you accumulate things, you have a certain lifestyle, and then just because you've retired, nobody wants to downshift and have a different lifestyle. And so, you know, inflation is a real thing. You know, we have a stated official inflation number out there that is probably not accurate, right? You know, you look back and see when they changed that official number, but when you talk to an individual family, and if you go through the hard work of calculating what their unique inflation rate is, it's usually much higher. And so when you factor that in, it can really change the success or lack of success of their strategy. And so the other thing that is important in this retirement planning space is life is uncertain. We've touched on that a few different ways, but you know, who knows what's behind door number 2 down the road for us. Nobody has a crystal ball to know what challenges we may have in this life. And so having access to liquidity is really important. And then the last thing is, and kind of the area that I want to spend some time on here with you, is if those, it's sort of the hierarchy of needs, right? If you're comfortable that you're not going to outlive your money and that you're going to be able to maintain a lifestyle and you have access to liquidity for those unforeseen things that happen in life, well, most of us have people that we love and causes that we care about. So we also like our life's work to have some meaning there too. And so these solutions, which is kind of strange, what we're talking about is they can actually address each one of these core concerns that just about every retiree has. And so the first thing I want to do, I want to actually show you with some financial planning software how this stuff works. But to set the backdrop for that, I want to go through the foundational thing to really understand. Richard has unpacked that, you know, in these retirement specific mortgages, there's 2 areas. The FHA insured version is unique. There's nothing else in the financial world that does what it does. And so one of the most unique things is how the access to home equity continues to grow, you know, once this loan is in place. And there are some details around this that I would encourage any of your listeners that want to explore this to get with Richard, and he can run a unique analysis based on their situation. But just to give you a sense of how this thing is unique, here's an example of somebody that has a $600,000 home. There are going to be costs involved in getting this set up, and Richard can go through that with you. And this is pretty current with where interest rates are now. We know that we went from 0 interest rates to where we are now, and this applies across all types of mortgages. But this is pretty current. And so what happens with this particular family, 65-year-old with a $600,000 home, they have access, available credit of about $196,000, let's call it. Okay, so day one. So these loans get put in place. Richard goes through the process of getting this thing structured for a family. And so they could use this 195,751 day one anywhere along the line, right? But what happens is day 2, this credit facility begins to increase for them. So we needed a regular appraisal to determine the value of that home, the 600,000, to get this loan set up for them. But beyond that point, it doesn't matter what happens to the value of the house. Their access to equity continues to go up, right? And Kim, I know that you're a specialist in the way that you work with your clients. And this also is tax efficiency. We're probably going into much higher tax rates given some of the decisions that have been made by the people in charge. And so just like some of the solutions that you work with, this would also not impact the taxation of their Social Security. It doesn't impact the Medicare means test if they have high income. So this becomes an additional tax-free resource for that client to use for any purpose. Okay. And so if you look at kind of what's going here is over a 25-year period, I'm showing this house continuing to grow at 4%. All right. And so 25 years later, it's worth 1.6 million, right? Their access to their equity is over $1 million now. The strange thing about this unique nature of this is if that house did not continue to grow in value, they would still have access to that same amount of money, including up to beyond the value of the house. And I'll show you here. So house growing at 4%, available equity, and the access to the total equity is about the same, right? 25 years later, but let's say that house only grows at 1% value in this illustration. You can see what happens here. There's nothing else on the planet that allows this same hedge of protection for a client, where they have access to more equity than the value of the home. Okay, so that is unique in the financial planning world. And so I'll take a breath. Any thoughts or questions there, or I'll keep moving?
No, I mean, just keep going. Sounds
Okay.
sounds good.
Yeah. So you look at that and you go, okay, well that's kind of cool. I've never seen that before, and so it's always good to follow up question. Well, so what? So what do you do with that? That's cool, but how does that actually come into my world, into my plan? And so one of the challenges that, again, we're living in an unusual time, but what we're seeing again is this risk of having volatile markets, and who knows what happens tomorrow. But right now, we've seen volatility in the markets, and so for those people who are beginning to retire or have just recently retired, right? So they are typically, most people start pulling from their retirement assets. Okay. And to your earlier point, Kim, if you're invested in things that have volatility, right? Stocks, bond prices, whatever, and you happen to be unlucky, right? And so we'll illustrate this with the first group of people here, on the left side. And these are people who retired into a bad market. So they needed the same amount of income regardless of what the value of their assets were. And you can see what happens. They run out of money at age 75. Their lucky neighbor got to retire 3 years later, right? And had a different experience because they didn't retire into a negative market, right? Their investments went up the first part of retirement. And so they had a way different experience, right? They didn't run out of money. They actually grew the value of their investments. And so that's a real risk. And it comes down, you can't control it as an individual or as a professional advisor. You're either lucky or you're unlucky, but people right now are experiencing some of that. And so again, I won't belabor this, but just to give you a sense of what kind of impact this can make on people. We redid the math on a study that was published in the Journal of Financial Planning a few years ago. And we wanted to see what the impact of being strategic and then including home equity versus thinking about it as a break the glass, last resort emergency, right? And so this first slide here is what you're looking at is somebody that, again, they set up the home equity conversion mortgage at retirement, and it's growing in the background. They do the typical, right? They continue to pull from their investments for the money that they need to live on, and then they had some bad market experiences early, and they're out of money at age 76, right? And so they're okay because we'd set up the home equity conversion mortgage. They have access to their home equity. And so they now turn to this home equity to pull from for the income they need for their lifestyle. And so at the end of the day, what we're looking at there is that scenario is there's no liquidity at the end, right? When they pass away, and there's about $3 million in the value of the home. It appreciated over this period of time, but there's also mortgage debt, right? So the kids sell the house, settle the mortgage debt, and the net estate, what goes to the heirs is about $1 million. And so watch this. Let's do the exact same math. This time, though, we're going to be strategic on which asset we use given market conditions. exact same rates of return, performance, what have you. The house appreciates at the same rate, but just because this particular family used their housing wealth in a strategic way versus looking at it as a last resort, their net residual estate increased more than $1.3 million, right, with the same assets. And there's liquidity, so there's multiple heirs. It becomes much easier to distribute those assets. All right, and so let's move into the question. A long way to get to the answer to your question, Kim. But so here's an example of somebody using this particular solution to fund this additional healthcare cost, this in-home care expense that we know there's a high statistical probability of it occurring, and it's very expensive. It's only going up in cost. This family has a 750 home that's paid for. They're retiring. John's 66 and Betty, his wife, is 65. They have about $1.2 million in financial assets in addition to their paid for home. And so you can see what they have coming in from Social Security and what they need to pull from those investment assets. But what happens here, about 10 years into retirement, John's going to have a health event, have a stroke or whatever, and he's going to need 4 years of in-home care at a current cost of $80,000 a year, right? And inflated. And that's unfortunately a really common scenario, right? And so what happened, and so he passes away after this 4 years of needing in-home care. Betty continues to live to age 95. And so when we talked about financial planning, right? So there's lots of different financial planning software out there. Most of the good stuff uses Monte Carlo simulators. And so it ends up showing this likelihood or probability of having a successful retirement based on what you're trying to achieve and what you have, and asset allocation and all that stuff. But so when we run that initially, they've got a very high probability of success, about 95%. Then we model in this health event for John, right? And now we're in trouble. They drop to only a 64% probability of being able to meet their, as a couple, their retirement goal. Okay, unacceptable. Well, we put in place this home equity conversion mortgage at the front end of their retirement. And so this line of credit has been building in the background. So now we're going to use it, pull from it to offset the long-term care expense. Okay, this in-home care expense that John's having to fund. And look what happens. We're now back up. When we use this additional resource in an efficient way, we're now back up to a high probability of them having a successful life. Okay. This next example I'll show you, a little unique. Richard talked about the proprietary or the non-FHA insured versions of these solutions. And here's somebody that, like a lot of people, have bought a house that really appreciated over the last few years. And so he has a situation here where he's 63, he's wanting to retire at 66, collecting Social Security at his full retirement age. You can see what he's got going on there. He enjoyed this low interest rate environment to have the refinance on this mortgage, and so he's still got about 20 years to go on this mortgage on this $3 million home. And so when we run the analysis for Adam, he's not going to make it. There's no way that he can keep this house that he wants to keep and continue to have to make that principal and interest payment. It's just not going to work. But that's a big part of what's going to make this his best retirement, right, for the one life that he's going to get to live. And so using a different type of financial planning software, WealthCare has a goals-based software called GDX 360. And so when we pull that into Adam's plan here, initially you can see that he's got no shot, right? He's got a 29% chance of making it in the retirement lifestyle that he wants. And so that's not going to work. The cool thing about the way this software works is they communicate through what's called a comfort zone, still using that same strong financial planning Monte Carlo simulator, but it's based on this life of not taking more risk or not sacrificing lifestyle, right? But to stay in this comfort zone. And as this person moves through their retirement, the idea is to keep them in this comfort zone. And so when we bring in this strategy of refinancing his current mortgage into a mortgage that he doesn't have to make that principal and interest payment on for the rest of the time he's in this home, he overshoots, right? He goes to a 94%. And so he's actually able to spend an additional $20,000 a year in the first, 20 years of his retirement and still be in this comfort zone. Okay. So that's what we're talking about when we look at, whether your audience, is kind of the do-it-yourself, or they're working with a professional advisor, right? And they have assets. These solutions can make a difference. And so, just a broad paintbrush here of, the way this thing can be used. Certainly, increasing the longevity of cash flow, this retirement asset strategy. We talked about in-home care. It is the number one planning gap out there, and one of the biggest risks in retirement. There's a way to optimize your Social Security if you haven't retired and started claiming your Social Security yet. Most people know that if you can delay the start of your Social Security, you get a higher, it's about an 8% increase. And so sometimes that can have an enormous positive wealth impact on people if they can delay the start of Social Security. But if they want to retire, sometimes there's an income gap. And so these solutions can actually be utilized to fill that gap. There's a way to purchase a home. And so about 30% of the real estate transactions in this country last year were people in this age demographic. They are upsizing, they are downsizing, they are right sizing, they're moving to get close to the grandkids or whatever. But it's a very mobile group of people. And so, being able to take these solutions and create a strategy where you can have, the home you want on the front end, purchase the home with one of these solutions and still not have to make that principal and interest payment unless you want to. It's a pretty neat tool. And so there are a lot of ways that can come into a broader planning conversation. A lot of folks want to stay in their home. We saw what happened with COVID. And so those home repairs can be very costly. Here's an efficient way for somebody to be able to do that and not have a negative impact on their retirement. Kim, again, your area of focus and specialization in your practice, the value of getting money into a tax-free environment. And so there's a lot of work being done to help advisors and help people understand the potential benefits to convert traditional IRA assets that are ultimately going to come out taxable into a tax-free Roth conversion. Traditional IRAs, because of some recent changes, are not as attractive as they once were for non-spouse beneficiaries. The kids have to take it over a compressed time period. And so there's actually a way to use these solutions to help people pay the tax due to make those conversions. And again, it all comes down to math. It's we want the questions, we want the analysis. This is either provable that it works for you or not. Right? This isn't witchcraft, so we can work the math with the client to figure out, is this a right solution for them or not. And there's actually, either through that purchase or the refinance of an acquisition indebtedness, tax deductible mortgage interest, there may be a new tax asset strategy that can be created for certain clients to help, with these Roth conversions and other things. Again, Richard made the point early that you don't have to have your home paid off to be able to utilize one of these loans potentially. Mm-hmm. If you've got a high equity position, let's kind of set the bar, around 50% equity position in your home. This is something that you probably ought to look at, transferring into just a mortgage, not just a lien on the property, but it's a mortgage with some flexibility. Right, they can still make a payment, an interest only or whatever, or no payment, based on what they're trying to achieve. We have seen this idea of people wanting to give while they're still alive, right?
Mhm.
Traditionally, we've not seen it at the rate that it's happening. That people usually do a whole lot of estate planning to give to the causes and the people they love after they pass. But I think COVID shook up a lot of people. And again, to your point that you make, Kim, we're going through something extraordinary in the world, and in this country. And so people are, if they have things they care about, people they care about, they're wanting to say, hey, is there a way that I can help a grandchild pay for college or help a mission project at my church or whatever it may be? And so these solutions can actually come in and help people access a resource to be able to do that, be blessed while you're still alive, and not have a negative impact on your retirement plan. Okay.
Mhm.
And then this line of credit, again, super unique, nothing else like it. It's worth asking the question and looking at. And I made the statement before, but I would encourage your audience that if any part of this conversation has piqued your interest and created some questions or have illuminated something that you thought was dark, get in contact with Richard. He is happy to have a conversation with you, your kids, your professional advisors, and put together the numbers and work it through to where you can see, is this something that could actually have value in your one life you're going to get to live or not.
Yeah, thank you, Hank. That was amazing. That's some very important information, valuable information. And it seems with this strategy, it can solve a lot of different problems. Like you said, it's not a one size fits all. So when you're looking at the presentation, you're seeing it could, pay a mortgage, it could be a gift, it could be, line of whatever that may be. Though this strategy can cover a lot of those issues that people are having. And it's important that, not only do we want to save for our retirement, but we also want to leave a legacy for our family as well. So many people nowadays are leaving debt and not leaving a legacy, right? People are living, having to rely on their family to support them because they didn't save enough for retirement. So we see this every single day. So being able to leverage some of the assets that we have or leverage other opportunities that we have in order to safeguard and to be able to have enough money, not run out of money, be able to leave a legacy to our family and, to end up in a good place. And like we had talked earlier, there's a lot of uncertainties out there, a lot of changes in the world, a lot of things that are not, we cannot foresee. And every day it's something different. So you need to have peace of mind and have a different kind of outlook of, okay, look at the trends, look at what's going on and making sure that you're going in the right direction, not backward. And the pandemic, unfortunately, put people in bad situations because they had to take from their retirement. They had to utilize funds that they wouldn't normally have touched, right? So now people are trying to get back and then keep moving forward. So again, like I said, this could be definitely a viable option for people to utilize to be able to get back to that place where they know they need to be. So I have one last question for you, though. Who is WealthCare Capital, and what's the significance of their partnership with One Trust?
Yeah, and I'm glad you asked. Thanks, Kim, for that. So, when we think about professional financial advisors, wealth managers, there's a lot of different business models out there. We're all familiar with the big Merrill Lynch's and the Morgan Stanleys, and then it goes all the way, through the insurance companies like New York Life, and then you have independent fiduciary only advisors. And so, your client should do the work, ask the hard questions, right, and understand what people do, how they do it, and I think more importantly, why they do what they do, right? But when we're thinking about the work that we do in this space with these solutions, it's pretty clear that very few financial advisors, relative to the number of financial advisors, regardless of the business model, have yet figured out how to really embrace this proactively, to officially get it involved in their practice to serve their clients in this way. And I would go as far as to say that if you're a financial advisor that doesn't understand this or doesn't have the ability to offer this type of planning, this additional resource, and your clients get exposed to this, that's a pretty uncomfortable, place to be in as a financial advisor, because especially for a fiduciary advisor, you're supposed to do the best thing, right thing for your client. And it would be literally impossible to do that unless you're able to analyze all their assets, including their home equity, in the different ways that can be analyzed, right? So all that to say, for your question, Kim, WealthCare Capital is the first company that has decided to officially partner with us, fortunately, to give their advisors, they're all over the country, to give their advisors the ability to access this resource, right? And you saw one of the illustrations that I had up there. They started as a financial planning fintech type company. So they were one of the first companies that created this goals-based financial planning software. And so, we've worked with them to help them be able to analyze these solutions within the context of that GDX 360, which is their financial planning software. But at the end of the day, what you have here with WealthCare is, I think, first to market, making a statement that this stuff matters and you can't unsee it once you see it. If you're in the business of guiding people around their financial life, it's very much in the same category of, healthcare. If you're a good doctor, you can save somebody physically. If you're a bad doctor, you can kill somebody or hurt somebody physically. The same is true with financial advisors. You can save somebody financially, or you can really hurt them and kill them financially. And so to be able to be a good advisor and do the best thing, right thing for your clients, you have to be able to look at this as an additional resource that the client either has or not, and analyze it within the context of this life that they want to live. And so we're proud to have been selected by WealthCare Capital to partner with them to help their advisors bring this into their planning conversations.
Thank you so much, Hank. That was great. I know, like you said, and I've been in that situation, not myself, but I've been, people that I work with where they're not offering a strategy to their clients, and they find out from somebody else, that client that guy that told them the strategy just got a new client, right? So we want to make sure that this information gets out, that financial planners, I know I'm going to share it with all the guys that I work with, just because they need this as another tool. And like I said before, this solves a lot of problems. So I want to thank you guys so much for being on today. Anybody wants to get more information, they offer a complimentary consultation to see if this strategy would actually work for you as a viable strategy, and that you can reach out to Richard, or you can reach out to me at Kim at Money Multiplier Pro, or at 973-919-9949, and I can get you in touch with these guys, and we can sit down and have a conversation to see if this is something that would work for you and actually help solve any issues that you might be having at the moment. So again, thank you guys so much for being on the show today. I appreciate it. This information is amazing, and I can't wait to share that with my viewers and get this information out there. So have a great day, everybody, and thank you so much again.
Thanks, Kim.
Thanks, Kim.
Cancer, 16 rounds of chemotherapy, multiple surgeries, feeling alone, feeling isolated. Those are the things that I felt while I was going through cancer. Those are the things that someone is feeling today. One Tough Cookie is here to help.